With tens of millions of subscribers, he's one of the biggest and, yeah, one of the most controversial creators on the Indian internet. But who is Dhruv Rathi really? Today, we're going to try to answer that by deconstructing the man in his own words, pulling directly from a recent, really in-depth interview. All right, let's get into it.
Leftist, liberal, Congress devotee, and yes, you heard that right, a German Shepherd. These are just a tiny sample of the labels thrown at him online every single day. So it really sets up the big question for us today. If you strip away all that noise, how does he define himself and his work? And that last label, the German one, actually brings us to probably the single most common attack you'll hear against him. It's an attack that questions his right to even talk about Indian issues. People call it his German connection. You see it in his comments all the time, right? How can you criticize India when you're living comfortably in Germany? It's a question designed to undermine his credibility before he even gets a word in.
Well, according to Rathi, the real story is way more practical than it is political. He says he moved to Germany for his bachelor's degree when he was just 17, long before his YouTube channel was even a thought. And the reason he stayed? It was a personal choice he made with his partner. Simple as that.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. He takes that German label and completely flips it on his critics. He claims that if you really want to talk about a German connection in India, you should be looking at the RSS. He alleges that the organization was ideologically inspired by European paramilitary groups back in the 1930s, and that they copied everything from their drills to their dress style. It is, to put it mildly, a very provocative counterargument.
Okay, so let's move away from the personal attacks and talk about his professional work. A massive part of his content is dedicated to critiquing what he calls propaganda, especially when he sees it in mainstream media and Bollywood. So, what does he actually mean by a propaganda film? He has a pretty specific checklist. For him, it's not just a movie that has a political opinion. No, he's talking about a film that literally uses a political party's slogans, one that paints all previous governments as traitors, and one that pushes a completely one-sided story as if it's historical fact. And this quote really gets to the heart of it for him. He argues that his issue isn't about artistic freedom or telling pro-government stories. The real problem, in his view, is an unbalanced system. He points a finger at the censor board, saying it allows pro-government films to get made easily, while he believes projects with a critical or dissenting view get blocked or just never see the light of day. So we've heard a lot about what he's against, but what is he actually for? Well, he boils his entire philosophy down to just 3 core principles. First up is rationalism, which is all about promoting a scientific way of thinking. Second is liberty, and for him, that really drills down to freedom of expression. And third is tolerance, the basic idea of peaceful coexistence. He says these 3 things are the bedrock of his entire worldview. And to prove how committed he is to that first value, rationalism, he makes a pretty bold statement. He says point blank that he's an atheist. And he immediately follows that up by saying that in today's India, if a politician admitted the same thing, their career would be over. They just couldn't win an election. Okay, so if those are his personal values, how do they scale up into a vision for the whole country? Let's take a look at what he thinks India needs when it comes to leadership and its top priorities. First off, he challenges this whole idea that India needs a single strong leader. He argues that's a dangerous path. What the country really needs, he says, is a strong team of ministers. An environment minister who's an expert, an education minister who's a dedicated reformer, and they need to be empowered to actually do their jobs independently, not just act like puppets. And what should this dream team focus on? He has 3 top priorities that he believes are being totally neglected. Number 1, the environment, for basic things like clean air and water. Number 2, education, specifically an education system that teaches kids how to think, not just what to memorize. And number 3, healthcare, which he sees as the most fundamental way to fight poverty and improve lives. And now we come to what might be his single most controversial statement in the whole interview. He was hit with that classic question, if not Modi, then who? And this was his answer. His logic, as he explains it, is that having a leader who does nothing would be better than having one whose policies he sees as actively destructive. Now, after hearing all that, you might be wondering, well, why doesn't he just get into politics himself? He actually addresses that directly. He says he doesn't see himself as a politician, he sees himself as an educator. He feels he can make a much more powerful and lasting change from the outside by helping shape public conversation and culture.
His belief is simple. If you change the people, the politics will have no choice but to follow.
So after breaking down all his views in his own words, we're left with a much, much bigger question. It doesn't matter if you see him as a hero or a villain or something in between. His rise kind of forces all of us to ask, in an age where mainstream media is so often distrusted and the internet is just a constant battle of narratives, what is the real role and what is the real responsibility of an independent creator?